Today we are looking at a case from the early 20th century, so sit back as we go to Spain. Enriqueta Martí was born on the 2nd of February 1868 in the small town of Sant Feliu de Llobregat in the province of Catalonia in Spain. At the time of her birth, Spain was still a country that was heavily focused around agriculture. There had been some industrialisation, mainly in Catalonia in the Basque Country, and the construction of railways had helped some of the more isolated communities. But in reality, Spain had not really changed very much since the early 1900s, and its economic progress had been slowed by political instability, uprisings, and unstable governments. Sadly, Enriqueta's mother died while she was still very young, so she was raised by her father, a hard-working farmer, who each day would spend hours in the fields in order to try and make enough money to provide for his daughter. He was well liked by his neighbours, who considered him to be a kind and honourable man. As well as his farm, Enriqueta's father had an interest in herbs, many of which he grew in his own herb garden. He was able to make plant potions, which he claimed could cure various ailments and illnesses. He would often supply these herbal remedies to the local people, especially if they were unable to get to see a doctor. Of course, he would charge a little for his trouble, and the extra money he earned was always very welcome, especially as things were difficult in Spain at the time. When Enriqueta was 15 years old, an affluent family from Barcelona came to spend the summer in Sant Feliu. The fresh air away from the city and the beautiful landscape was the perfect place for them to take their holidays. The family had several children, and Enriqueta helped look after them. Like her father, she had a very caring nature, and the children became very fond of her. When the summer was over and the family were about to return to Barcelona, they asked her if she would come with them to work as their childminder. Enriqueta was very excited by this, and of course she accepted. Although Barcelona was only 23 kilometres from her hometown, it was a big city and very different to anything she had experienced before. There were large boulevards, beautiful parks, and the streets were always full of people hurriedly going about their daily business. She settled in very well, and for the next 2 years worked for the family and lived in their house in a very affluent neighbourhood. On her days off, she would always go out and explore. She would visit the side streets and the alleyways, and soon became acquainted with the city's less desirable locations. While she cared for the children, she also studied the use of herbal remedies, something that she had first been taught by her father. She prepared natural potions and ointments that could be used in the treatment of such things as venereal disease or in order to bring on a miscarriage. During her time in Barcelona, she was exposed to both the wealthy and the impoverished side of the city, and it was not just the poor who were in need of her natural treatments. Many of those who moved in the higher social circles often called upon her services. She also had remedies that she claimed serve as a contraceptive. Word soon spread about the young lady from Sant Feliu, and people were always reassured by Enriqueta's polite manner and utmost discretion. Pregnant unmarried women would pay a very good price for her help, as would the men who had spent too much time visiting the city's brothels. Many of her clients were distinguished figures in Barcelona society, and she became quite well known in the city. However, one day, a young lady from a prominent family suddenly died after she had taken one of Enriqueta's potions. The young lady had been pregnant, and Enriqueta had assured her that her herbal remedy would sort out her problem. This caused great scandal in Barcelona, so much so that the family for who she worked dismissed her from their employment. By now, Enriqueta was well acquainted with the city, and after packing her belongings, she took a room in the El Raval district, one of the poorer neighbourhoods. However, she had ambition to one day be able to return to live in a more elegant area. She was still young, she was attractive, and she also knew how to make herbal remedies. She believed that she would be able to earn enough money to have a good life. She decided to work in a brothel, as she thought that she would be able to work as a prostitute and would also be able to sell her treatments. She worked in 2 locations, one at the Barcelona docks, the other at Portal de Santa Madrona. A few years passed, and she was by now very well known in the area and very popular amongst the men who frequented the Barcelona brothels, many who sought her affection. One such gentleman was an artist named Juan Pucaló, and in 1895 he asked Enriqueta to marry him, but he insisted that she gave up working as a prostitute. She agreed, and they married. For a while they were both very happy. He spent the day painting and wanted to have a peaceful life and start a family. Enriqueta was already 26 years old, which was the age that many young Spanish women had children. So Juan thought that she would be happy to settle down and stay at home. She had been independent for a long time, had enjoyed her life in the city, and liked earning her own money. She grew tired of the stay-at-home lifestyle, and soon after went back to her old ways of working the streets, making herbal potions, and spending time in the city's more undesirable locations. Her behaviour became quite bizarre. Her husband believed that it may have been due to the fact that she had been unable to conceive. By 1901, the couple were living apart, and eventually they went their own separate ways. Enriqueta again began to spend the evenings working in the city's brothels. However, she did have other ways of making money. During the day, she would dress herself as a beggar and wait outside churches. She was part of a network of people who did this, many who were children. People would then take pity on them and leave an offering in their baskets. The clientele at the brothels was also changing, and it seemed that the more elite Spanish men were looking for the more sophisticated prostitutes, the ones who dressed in a more elegant manner. Enriqueta bought stylish gowns and fashionable dresses. She would then look for clients outside the locations that the wealthy men frequented. There had been reports that children had gone missing from some of Barcelona's poorer neighbourhoods, and it was alleged that Enriqueta was involved in taking these children and, without remorse, offering them to her clients. There were also rumours that she would kill some of them and use their remains to make blood potions for Barcelona's wealthier residents, who were desperate to cure themselves from diseases such as tuberculosis. Many people at the time believed that human blood, mixed with herbal potions, could cure things that conventional medicine had been unable to. People said that the bones of these victims were grinded, and the fat from their bodies was sold to be used in ointments. In 1909, Enriqueta was arrested and taken into custody. She was accused of providing children for her wealthy clients. Her fellow accused was a young man from a very well-to-do family. However, as soon as the authorities realised that if the young man's name was discovered by the press, or if Enriqueta told the journalists of the wealthy clients that frequented the city's houses of ill repute, a great scandal would descend on Barcelona and cause great embarrassment to some of the most noble families in the city. Enriqueta was released without charge. The whole incident was soon forgotten. She then returned to her life of potions, prostitution, and taking children. Like all cities in the early 20th century, Barcelona had many social problems. El Raval and other poor neighbourhoods had a highly dense population, and many people lived in terrible conditions. Often families shared one room. The buildings would usually be frequented by rats, and many of the residents suffered from diseases such as cholera, typhus and tuberculosis. And as they were so cramped, everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. Enriqueta, however, tried to stay away from her neighbours. She had no desire to gossip or chat, and due to this, they considered her to be an unpleasant character and viewed her with suspicion. By now she was living with her father, who had also moved to Barcelona, and a girl named Angelita, who she claimed was her daughter. On the 12th of February 1912, a young girl named Teresita Guitart went missing. The news of her disappearance soon spread, and people started to look for the child. The residents of Barcelona were very worried. Too many children went missing, and the police had never been seen to do very much about it. In previous years, there had been a public revolt, as young men had been conscripted to serve in the war in northern Africa. However, wealthy parents could pay for their sons to be excused from service. Now the poor started to put pressure on the authorities. They had had enough of being treated in a different way, and they thought that those who ran the city needed to do more to help with all the social issues and find the person responsible for taking the children. The mayor ordered that a city-wide search take place in an attempt to find the young girl. A lady named Senora Claudia Elias lived in the same tenement building in the El Raval neighbourhood as Enriqueta. She noticed that a child who was about 5 years old was peering through a window. She thought the child was a girl, although she looked very much out of place. All of her hair had been cut off, and she also looked sad. Claudia was a housewife, and she knew most people's business. She was known to gossip with all her neighbours. The girl's appearance looked very odd. No one would cut their daughter's hair quite so short. She also knew that only Enriqueta, her father, and her daughter lived there. She knocked at Enriqueta's door to ask who was the young girl that she had seen by the window. Everyone was trying to find the missing 5-year-old, Teresita Gutat, and knowing of Enriqueta's reputation, Claudia was convinced that this could be the missing girl. Enriqueta opened the door, and Claudia asked her who the girl was. But without uttering a word, Enriqueta just slammed the door. Claudia was not surprised by her reaction, as she had always found Enriqueta to be discourteous and abrupt. She told a neighbour, a man who made mattresses. He then hurried off to report what Senora Claudia Elias had seen. He spoke to a policeman named Jose Asens, who in turn informed his superior, Inspector Ribot. The police did not initially do anything, and it was not until the 27th of February, 2 weeks after the disappearance of Teresita, that they finally went to Enriqueta's apartment with a search warrant. Enriqueta was outside when they arrived, and the officers told her that it had come to their attention that she kept chickens in her small apartment, which she was not permitted to do. She escorted the men upstairs and opened the door. There were no chickens. However, they did see 2 girls playing on the floor. The officers asked their names. One replied she was a daughter of Enriqueta, named Angelita. The other said that her name was Felicidad. One of the officers then asked the little girl if her name was in fact Teresita Gutat, and she replied that it was. When they questioned Enriqueta, she claimed that she had found the girl the day before in a terrible state. She said that she was dirty and her hair was infested with lice. That's why she had cut it off. They did not believe her, as her neighbour had given them a statement saying that she had seen the girl a few days before. Although very young, Teresita told the police a macabre tale. She said that her mother had only left her for a moment when Enriqueta took her. She covered her head with a cloth and promised her treats if she was quiet. Once in the apartment, Enriqueta cut her hair and told her that her name would now be Felicidad and that her parents no longer wanted her. The young girl added that she had seen bags full of children's clothes that were covered in blood and a big knife. The police reunited the girl with her parents, and there was much relief and celebration throughout the city. Enriqueta was taken into custody while the police searched the apartment for more evidence. Angelita, Enriqueta's alleged daughter, told the detectives that before the arrival of Teresita, there had been another boy who was 5 years old and that his name was Pepito. She said that she had seen her mother kill him on the kitchen table. She was scared, and making sure her mother did not see her, she quickly went back to bed and pretended to be asleep. When the detectives asked Enriqueta where Pepito was, she replied that she had taken him back to the countryside, as she was only caring for him temporarily. They then asked where exactly did the family live, and what was their name. She had no answer. It was concluded that she had kidnapped Pepito from the streets, and that she had killed the boy right there in the apartment. A thorough search of Enriqueta's tenement at El Rival took place a few days later. It was very dirty, damp, and with a strong, pungent smell. It seemed that she had been living in extreme poverty. The bedroom was locked, but when the police entered, they were very surprised by what they found. It was elegantly decorated, with fancy wallpaper, lamps, and the bed sheets were made from very fine fabric. The cupboard was full of beautiful girls' and boys' clothing. However, they also found a sack of blood-stained children's clothes, and another with small children's bones. These had all been exposed to fire. Juan Pujaló, Enriqueta's ex-husband, came forward. He told the police that he had nothing to do with the murders, but she had used his name, Pujaló, when renting the apartment. He said that they had not been living together for over 5 years, and that Angelita was not Enriqueta's daughter, and not his daughter either. A medical examination also confirmed that Enriqueta had never given birth. Later, Enriqueta confessed that the child Angelita was her niece. She said that she had helped her husband's sister while she was in labour, and after the baby girl was born, she told her that she had died. This, however, was not true, and instead, she had secretly kept the child for herself. Once Enriqueta was detained, she was placed in prison to await trial. There was a public frenzy, as finally, the police had the monster of Barcelona behind bars. Her arrest was reported across Spain and caused a sensation. Newspapers filled their pages with stories about Enriqueta, and she was dubbed the vampire of Barcelona. Every week more allegations emerged from witnesses, many who claimed that their children had been stolen. A woman from the town of Alcañiz told of how Enriqueta had taken her son 6 years earlier. She said she had travelled to Barcelona with her young child, and Enriqueta had shown her great kindness. She said that she was exhausted and very hungry after her long journey, so although she had only just met Enriqueta, she left her son with her for a short time. But Enriqueta disappeared with him. The lady said that she had never found out what had happened to her son. With all the evidence against her, Enriqueta knew that she would be found guilty and probably executed for her actions. So possibly due to a sense of remorse, she confessed that she also rented other properties, one apartment on Talleres Street, another on Picalque Street, and a small house on Juegos Florales. These properties were searched and more human remains were found, along with ointments and herbal remedies. 15 jugs were discovered, some containing human fat, others contained blood, hair and bones. In a cupboard, investigators came across some of Enriqueta's magic cures that she had already prepared to sell. Wealthy people would pay handsomely for these products, without too much interest in where they had actually come from. Investigators made a macabre discovery when they found bodies of children buried under the floor slabs and hidden in false walls. One was a skeleton of a boy estimated to be 3 years old. Interestingly, there was a book which contained the names of many of her clients, and it was rumoured that some were well-known people in the city who were considered to be the pinnacle of Barcelona society. There was also an old scroll with the recipes and notes about how to prepare herbal potions. Once it was known that there was a book which contained the identity of her clients, the press and the public demanded that the names be released. However, due to the sensitivity regarding some of those listed, which it was alleged included politicians, bankers and doctors, the names were never revealed. Instead, one newspaper published a headline stating that the list contained only people that she had conned out of money and of the places where she went begging. Troubled about all the stories appearing about her in the newspapers, she attempted to take her own life. She was unsuccessful, but following the sinking of the Titanic on the 15th of April 1912, the Spanish newspapers turned their attention away from Enriqueta, and for the next few weeks, the headlines were all about the ship that sunk in the North Atlantic Ocean. After this, the interest in Enriqueta Martí seemed to fade. On the 12th of May 1913, before Spain could witness the trial of the vampire of Barcelona, Enriqueta Martí died. The official account was that she had died of cancer of the uterus, but it is also possible that she was lynched by other inmates, either on the orders of an influential figure who feared that she might expose him as one of her clients, or due to the barbaric crimes that she had committed. She was buried in a mass grave on the outskirts of Barcelona and took most of the names of the victims and her clients with her. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case